Choose your character.
All right. Welcome back to the Geekset podcast, the only podcast that blend hip-hop culture and geek culture together. I'm your boy Deuces, and this is 1-on-1 with Deuces, the place where I speak with creators, curators, and people that you should know. And right now, man, we got the big dog. We got the homie, somebody that I've been a fan of for a while. We've been trying to get this taken care of for quite some time. But I got the homie Chuck Collins, aka the creator of Bounce Comics. Man, how are you doing, brother?
Oh man, I'm chilling, man. I'm trying my best to chill in the craziness that is 2021. That's what's happening right now.
It's funny because it's almost sound like we're repeating ourselves. As I was doing my research, of course, I go back and listen to some other interviews and everything, and it's like, man, I swear I could have swore like you said that in 2020, and it was like it's just, we're repeating ourselves because it was like we went into this year thinking like, okay, it's gonna be different, but it was like
no,
it was just like it just moved to the side.
No, it was an upgrade. It was 2020 2.0. That's all it was. This is all this year is. 2020 actually hasn't come yet, just so you know. This 2021 doesn't come yet. This is literally an extension, like that really bad Windows extension that comes out right before the good one. That's exactly what's happening right now.
You want to, and this is what's crazy about it is that when you tell people this, like, okay, for those who have kids, you was like, you know what? Kids have been impacted 3 grades in a row with Corona and the pandemic, and people are like, wait, what? And it's like, yeah, you just forgot about 2020. Like you assume that everything was happened in 2021, but it was like, no, it's all been just boom, 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 boom.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy about that because like I said, when the lockdown happened, it happened March of 2020. So that was 1 year. And then all of the second year for the kids pretty much was kids being at home. And then kids are still at home this year. That's 3 grades in a row that they have been impacted.
Absolutely.
Once you put
it goes against the grain of what we thought that schooling was supposed to be. You go from grade to grade and you progress. You get to your level. Kids at 3rd grade, they're at level 3, like a role-playing game. And then they get to 4th grade, they're level 4. Like, no, they stuck on level 3 and can't beat that last boss called capitalism. That's what happened.
Yeah, man, it's so wild, man. But here's what I realized having these conversations that I've been having with a lot of just dope people. It's like creatives. You think that at first I'm like, okay, if you're a creative and you already work at home, this is the best time for you because you really get a chance to buckle down and work on things. And though a lot of people did do it that way, you still got to remember that people still also in their regular lives are going to be dealing with stuff, right? So it's like, yes, I'm a creative and most of my workstation is right here, but there's still so much stuff that is impacting that I'm not even in the creative space to work. And so it's just like, how have you been managing with that, knowing that you can really just buckle down and draw and illustrate, but you still have a lot of stuff that you have to deal with, especially with us being Black in this world. How have you been navigating that?
You know what? That's a great question. It's a very loaded question, only because it impacted me more than I thought. Because all of my previous work has been social commentary, comedy, and satire. Right. So what I think originally people thought was going to happen when this whole thing happened with this pandemic was, this is going to be a bit of a rough patch. People are going to come together, do what they have to do, and then we'll get out of it. Much like everything else. I mean, it's not the first time we've dealt with shit like this. I mean, we weren't alive when the shit went down with the Spanish flu. I mean, we weren't alive during polio, smallpox, and everything. But people got over it and did what they had to do. There were a few crazy motherfuckers like there are now, but it's a different time. And I think for me, it I had to take a step back away from doing bounce for a while and actually just take on freelance work because I didn't have to think about anything. It was just work. It was just work for a means to an end, to just get paid, pay bills, and do what I have to do. But when it came down for me to actually sit down and make a joke, I couldn't do that. I couldn't make a joke. Two of my best friends died from the virus.
Sorry to hear that.
And thank you. But it was like when that shit, it's one thing when you hear about all the stuff that impacts everybody on the news. It's another thing when it's right on your doorstep. I had two friends that died from it, and I had like 4 people that I knew that got diagnosed, one of which is still suffering from the ramifications of the virus itself. So when that hits you, it's like, how the fuck can I make jokes about this? I'm not gonna do this. It's crazy. I've seen a few comics and I've seen a few comedic approaches to doing this and everything else that have been very brilliant. I just wasn't in the right headspace. So it just but now I think what happened especially here in New York, you have the mandates that in order for you to go to a bar, in order for you to go to any venue, you have to show like some form of vaccination proof or your vaccination card and everything else. It's just, to me, it's not a big deal because it's just like the same aspect of like, if I'm going to another country, I have to have my immunizations.
Yeah, right.
It's the same exact thing. I mean, it's just what it is. But like, I think from that, and there was a friend of mine that I used to work with when I used to work as a bouncer who opened up his own bar like several months before the pandemic hit. He's still open now, which a lot of bars around here didn't survive the pandemic and the shutdown. Yeah. But he still survived, and all of my old people from the other bar I used to work at, they all work there now. And I just happened to, like, one day, a few months ago, I said, you know what, I'm out. Let me go over there and visit everybody. I got over there, and the very first thing that they started doing was they started looking at people's phones, because here in New York, you have like the barcode that tells you if you've been vaccinated.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, wait, they got to do that. And they got to show their ID because of age. And I was like, that's an interesting idea for a comic. So I sat down the whole night, watched my boy who was working the door, like, do this. And I was like, I think I'm gonna make, because I stopped working as a bouncer 3 years ago. I was
right.
I'm too old to be, running after motherfuckers, snorting coke on the bar, doing all kind, threatening my life and all kind. I just can't do. I'm a man of a certain age, man. I can't do that shit no more. Like, I think the next time I have a fight with somebody, it's gonna be the last battle, like the last boss in the video game. Yeah. Like, it's gonna be like Ken and Ryu versus Bison. Like, either I survive this or I'm gonna mark that nigga for life. Like, that's just
I gotta imagine now, like I said, like, there's people that, especially that's fan of the comics, who know you, or the people who know you, like, oh, you don't really gotta bounce. We just want you there, because it's like, it's kind of like meta. It's like, oh man, like, oh hey.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Well, that's what it turned into. People would like, I put the comic out and they automatically thought I was the same dude. I was like, I'm not that. Right. These are my inner thoughts. This is like what I think about when I'm working the door. Some of the shit I've actually done. Most of it I didn't. Right. Thank God situations worked out a little bit differently.
Right.
So I didn't have to like go ham and do some crazy shit. But like, it's what it is. But I think a lot of people like got all caught up because I made the whole thing, on the persona of the bouncer. And it just, after a while, it just became one of those things. Like, every time something would happen, even if I didn't make a comic about it, people would be like, yo, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, it's fucked up. Like, what do you think about what Candace Owens said? I'm like, I don't know. She crazy. What the fuck do you want me to say about it? Like, why is anybody even listening to her? Like, why did you even see her tweet? Fucking block her. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
And that's because, like, if people read your comic, they'll know that it's not about just that, right? Because it's like, a drunk at a bar probably is not going to bring that up at that moment. So why would why would he really comment on it? And at that moment,
right.
Like it's and that's what I think. What I really gravitated towards, because I remember when I started doing this podcast, I got introduced to a slew of Black creators, right? So I went down this path of just, let me just see what's going out there, because we're in this geek world, but we blend the cultures, and I said both cultures, they blend so well. And I was like, I don't only want to just focus on the talent as far as just like the actors and everything like that. I said, I want to see the people behind it who are making illustrations, these dope, so, I was fortunate enough to be able to like interview people like Carl Jones and Marco Bernard and Anthony Piper and Justin Richburg and yourself now, what I'm saying? So it was like, I was like, oh man, there's all these dope individuals. And I just remember when I came across your comics, one, your comic style, it drew to me, because I started seeing like Afro Samurai, type of, just the way that the character looked. And I'm like, okay, this looks really dope. And then as I started seeing just like the 4 panels, and I was like, oh, so he's a bouncer. And of course, immediately, which one, what I love that you explained, immediately I'm like, okay, so he's a Black bouncer, so he's probably a superhero and everything like that. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute, no. He's not a superhero. He's a Black man who's a bouncer who just irritated with dealing with all of these.
Yeah, that's all it is.
But I was like, it's so relatable, because everybody knows that person, whether you're a bouncer or not. Everybody knows the Black guy that's like, oh my, not again. Like,
get right. Like, seriously, and all right, I'm gonna bring this one thing up, and this is gonna be hilarious. All right, and bear with me, because this may sound off tangent, but I'm 45 years old, right? Okay. I would say about 5 years ago when I hit 40, actually even before that, I would say like when I was like 38 years old, I used to live in Queens, and there was an auto repair shop that was right on the corner of where I live, right? And it was owned by a whole bunch of West Indian dudes. Now, these dudes, probably, they were the same age I'm at now. They're probably like 45, 50 years old. And, they're just out there when they, no, ain't nobody fixing their car in the middle of the day. So they're just out there, like, just being mad.
Right.
I would walk by, I'm going to the store. This is back when I was like, smoking every day, like actual cigarettes. I was going to buy myself a pack of cigarettes. And I'm walking by, just in my world, either listening to some music or listening to a podcast or whatever in my headphones. And I would get the dirtiest look from these older Black dudes. And I'm sitting there like, okay. I look behind me like, is somebody else they got beef with walking with me? Like, I don't know what's going on right now. And then they would sit there and they would just give me like all kinds of grief. But then it was one day when I would just, I was just walking, I just looked at them and I said, yo, what's up, fellas? That was all I needed to say. And it was like, oh, snap. They were all like, hey, what's up? And then we became cool ever since after that. It was like one of those things. But it's such a crazy thing, because it's like, you move in these spaces, especially with a lot of people. Everybody that you just mentioned, at some point or another, I've had some kind of interaction with them, and they're all of them are really good people. It's just it turns to one of those things where I created the character to just be that, to deal with that kind of frustration that we face as Black people every day for just simply existing. Not because, it's like one of those things where you're doing something off the hook crazy, or you're just walking the street saying those kinds of crazy shit. It's just, you're just out here existing. Yeah. You're going to the store, you're getting something to eat, and you're met with this insanity that only Black people know about. Yeah. Like, or people of color in general that have to deal with this whole process of like, it could be a microaggression, it could be a subtle act of racism, it could be somebody trying to touch your hair, or somebody, anything else like that. You have to deal with that, and it's a reality that most people don't know about. Yeah. Well, let me bring it to the realness. A reality that most white folks don't know about. Yeah. So me being in that space and dealing with the aspect of overprivilegedness, when, being at the bar, you gotta sit there and tell somebody, no. A simple word, N-O, no. I gotta tell you that. You can't do this particular thing. Everything will come out, like everything in there, oh, well, do you know who my father is? It's my favorite. I'm friends with the owner, another favorite of mine. Right. It's not your job to. I'm in a public space. The customer is always right. This, that, and the third. And you're just sitting there like, no, you're being an asshole. My job is to tell you not to be that asshole for me to put you in your place. But yeah, it's just what it is.
I always say that if I had a time machine, I would go back to the person who created the phrase "the customer is always right," and I would stop him from that. So I'm a manager at a call center in my day job, so
yeah,
I do that a lot, and I'm just like, damn, no. I was like, I get where like the phrase came from, but that's the worst phrase ever because people latch onto that and take it in a literal sense, and it's like, no, just because you say that at the end of your nonsense does not mean that you are right. Like, yes, there's some moments where a customer is right, but the customer is not always right. And, and so I can.
Well, it comes down to this. That was when I actually did a comic about it, where there was a customer that said that the customer is always right. And I'm like, no, actually, that is not the truth. Right. The customer is not always right. That's why they hire me to tell you that you're not right, because they don't want to deal with you. I have to. Right. And so, like, I am the filter that you need to get through. So it's just like, you know, when you're sitting there snorting coke on the bar, or trying to go into the women's bathroom because you saw a girl you like, or you're grabbing somebody by the ass, or you're trying to do something crazy, or you're standing on top of a table, because you're the customer, that doesn't mean that you're right. And my job is to tell you, no, you cannot do these things. Like, that's just what it is. Like, but and it's funny because it's like, these are the things that I found really crazy when I was working in like, I guess like 15 years of working at the bar. The interesting thing to me is like certain codes of conduct went out the door. Like, there was no aspect of like, well, you know, maybe I shouldn't go into the ladies' room and try to go into the stall that she's in without her permission. Like, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I shouldn't take an illegal drug and put lines on the bar and try and snort it in front of like a crowd of 100 people. Like,
and see, this is what I realized, just like in the profession that I'm at, you know. I tell people all the time, I said, I'm more reluctant to help out the person who just tried it. Like, not nothing like crazy, but who tried it, but no. And then when I tell them, like, no, they're like, all right, my fault. Yeah, I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like,
right.
in essence, people always want credits, right? And I'm like, everybody knows how. You got to pay your bill. You got to do this, right? If a customer is telling me like, oh, I've been a customer for this long, I've deserved this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, I'm like, you feel way entitled. Now, if it's a person just like, look, hey, I did forget. Like, is there anything y'all could do? I may help out, right? So it's like the same thing. Like, I've been to the club, I pop bottles. Like, you know what I'm saying? I come from that era where it was like that lifestyle. Now, there's been times where I'm standing on the couch, you know, I got my bottles, bouncer comes like, you can't do that. I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna be like, talk about I paid to be like, nah, I know that.
And that's the thing, because you know, we out here having a good time, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, yo, we out here like everybody's doing their thing and everything else. Look, I've been the dude too. I've gone to a couple of clubs and bars and stuff and everything, and done the things that I wasn't supposed to do. And the next thing you know, it's like, yeah, you can't do that here. I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? Because for me, it's like going to somebody else's crib. Okay, I go to your crib. The way I do things at mine ain't going to be the same way you're going to do things at yours. And you know what? Because I'm here now, I have to be able to respect that. It may be outside of my knowledge. It may be outside of like what I think is right or whatever the case is. But this is your crib. This is what you do. I'm not going to disrespect it. And if I do anything that comes out of place, you ask me to leave, I guess I'm going to have to do that.
And then that's it. It's like, and that's why I say people like you gotta have a sense. Like, once you get into that mindset of you're entitled, you should be able to do this because of X, Y, and Z, then it's like, now you're taking it a little bit too far. Like, you know what I'm saying?
It's just some of the shit that I used to have to deal with. Oh man, you don't even want to know. Some of the ridiculousness that people have. I remember this one time, this girl came up, she was just like, she gave me a fake ID. And usually, when we get in New York State, if a bouncer gets a fake ID, we have to confiscate it. So I confiscated the ID, and she was outside. She was crying. She's like, "You took my real identification." And I was like, "Man, we're past this point now. We're past this point of lying. Like, it's fake. You don't have to maintain the act." But they felt that they had to, because they wanted to, they had to keep going because they wanted to be right about the situation. And they kept arguing with me over and over and over again, even after I told them, like, "You can't do this." The very last thing that I told them that made everybody, all of her group of friends, shut the fuck up. I was like, "All right, look, check this out. There's a cop car across the street. Go and tell that police officer that I stole your ID." Mm-hmm. Use exactly the word stole, because what that is, they're going to come over and actually try to arrest me because I literally stole your property. And go ahead and tell them that. Now, when I give it to them and they realize it's actually counterfeit, then you have a problem. Exactly.
You know what's funny? Like, and the reason, so I saw that strip and I was like, that's how I deal with like angry customers a lot of the times over the phone. Right. Like, "Oh, no, I know I paid this. I know I did this." I was like, you know what? I'm not going to argue if you did or didn't. If you did, then all you need to do is show me the funds coming out of your account. Right. I don't need your full statement. Show me that part with the transaction ID, and I will payment. You know what always happens? They can't find it, right? Or this is the best one. So, I don't want to give too much about my job or where I'm at, but like the payment is based off of a month, right? So let's say you're having an issue for like a couple of hours. Right. "Oh, you want to credit half of my bill or anything like that?" And I tell them, like, "All right, how inconvenienced were you?" I was like, you didn't have whatever service for 5 hours. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to credit you the amount of inconvenience for you. And so what I'll do is I'll take their monthly amount and divide it by 30. And I'm like, all right, so the daily rate. Now I'm going to divide your daily rate by 24 hours. So this is your hourly rate. So now I'm going to give you a credit for that 5 hours, which now is like $2 and some change, only because you took that approach instead of you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's one of those, like, you start taking those different approaches. Like, look, I can help you out, but hey, I get it. You were inconvenienced for 5 hours. I'm going to help you out, but you don't have to yell and scream and make up this whole scenario. "Oh, I'm going to call my attorney." I'm pretty sure if you have an attorney on retainer, they're not going to take this case for 5 hours of inconvenience and try to sue.
Right. So anytime you're dealing with the public or you're dealing with people with whatever kind of egos or whatever, you're gonna get that. But I will say this, because don't get into too much of what you do. Just know that I understand, because you're dealing with the public.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with all kinds of craziness. I will say though, and this is one of the things that all the time, I said, stop arguing with the people who are on the phone with you when it comes to this stuff, because they didn't make the rules. Because trust me when I tell you, they got the same bills that they paying just like you. You had a problem with it, take it with the head of the company or the person who passed a law to do the things that they're doing in the first place. That's what I used to tell people at the bar all the time. I used to say, like, why do you have to check my ID? This is some bullshit and everything else. Like, go talk to Mayor Bloomberg, because he's the one who signed off on this thing for me to do this thing. Like, I can't, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
My boss can't do it. You want to talk to my manager? He's going to tell you the same fucking thing. Like, what do you want me to do? Go protest in front of Mayor Bloomberg's office and tell him, "Hey, I can't get in a bar without any ID, and I think it's a bunch of bullshit." You want to know why you ain't going to do it? Because you're not going to remember tomorrow, the next day, because you've been drinking so fucking much. And that's why.
once you got to take it up to the official, you realize what the argument is. It's like, this is not, I don't have any legs to stand on. But so with your comic, and one of the things that also I thought was a great approach to it. So in this world, in this digital world where we pretty much can do anything, we can create a full comic book strip. I mean, a full comic book novel, through all these companies, everything. You took the idea of going with a strip, 4-panel strip with yours, right? And I started thinking about, you know what? Like, one, there's two responsibilities with a strip. Is one, because you only have X amount of panels, you need to get whatever you are trying to get for that actual strip taken care of within those 4 panels, right?
Right.
Two, like the way that you do your comedic style is like, okay, how do I make sure it lands within those 4 panels? And so now, so then your strips live on with more of a conversation now. So now it's like, okay, if I read your strip, I may get this interpretation from it. This other person may get it sparks a conversation. And I thought that was so dope. I wanted to kind of get like, why did you choose to go with the strip versus doing a full book or
yeah, and thank you for that question. That's actually something that, you know, even for a while it was very confusing to me on how I approached doing it, because I'll tell you the first thing that was a major influence on me as a kid, reading comic strips from the newspapers.
Right.
You know, I used to read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes, a lot of Curtis, a lot of Peanuts. There was also another one that I used to love called One Big Happy. And a lot of these comic strips usually had a very amazing way of telling a story based within 3 panels.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these dudes, a lot of these comic artists they belonged to syndicates when they had to get X amount of work done in a certain amount of time. And one of the things I respected the most, especially something like Calvin and Hobbes, where you would have a whole philosophical conversation in the span of 3 panels.
Yeah. And they used to get deep within those 3 panels.
Bro, I get existential dread off of, wow, my God, what is my life right now? Even as a kid, or even a comic strip like Doonesbury, that was heavily political at the time, when I was growing up. And, you know, these are comics I was reading in like 8th grade, you know, in the late 80s. And then when you fast forward to the mid 90s, when you had like Boondocks, that was actually coming out with Aaron McGruder, you know, we're talking about like before the actual TV show, you know, taking on topics that I already knew about, people that in my community, we were already having these conversations, and seeing him do the same thing that a lot of these other comic strips did, like Doonesbury and Calvin Hobbes, but from a Black perspective, it was just like, this is some real shit. So, you know, trust me, I come from the background of like animation and comics and doing full ass like 33-page comic issues and all that other stuff. Like, you know, I know a lot of people who taught me the things that I know about comics came from that world. But I felt that I needed to kind of divorce myself from that, because I realized the kind of stories that I wanted to tell didn't necessarily fit that whole, you know, men in tights with my underwear outside my drawer, like my tights, kind of with my pirate boots and my mask, my Bucky mask. Like, that wasn't my thing to do. Right. And no disrespect to the people who've done that, no disrespect to the comic creators who love that, but it's just not my thing. So I figured doing a story like Bounce was to take that same thing, because every night that you would go into work, at least for me, or every night I had to deal with somebody, came from a place of not knowing what to expect. So I wanted the reader to get that too. And the second thing was that, you know, the comic also deals with the aspect of satire, absurdism, and just straight up surrealism. Because some of the shit that I used to see, I'm like, this is not reality right now. This is not real. Like some of the stuff and people that I had to deal with in the conversations I had with them, I'm like, this is a real person really thinking this way. And I am a Black person that doesn't share the same kind of thoughts. And now I have to deal with it. And I'm in this moment. So it's an aspect of really hilarious conversations that were very awkward that I used to have to deal with. And I wanted to portray that same thing with the reader. Like, you're me, and you're dealing with this weird and absurd situation. And now we're going to have to make our way through this. And how are we going to do it in 4 panels? So that was the main focus for every time I would write the comic. It would be the actual message and things that I wanted to happen, which is the actual punchline of said joke, and the lead up, and then the follow through.
Right.
You know, so that was just the whole thing. But it was very it's hard. It was hard to do back then, but because I had so many experiences working at the bar, it flowed really naturally. But when we went down to it, you know, in the past 2 years, it just became harder and harder to do, because every time I would come up with a punchline for a joke, it seems like reality would beat me to the punch. Mm-hmm. Like predicting that people would have a problem dealing with a major pandemic. I remember a few months prior, and this wasn't even a comic, it was just me making an observation with a friend of mine about how shit is going to go down in this country. And then seeing the way people reacted, I was like, oh my God, I could have totally made a comic about this, and I didn't, but reality beat me to the punch. Yeah. I didn't have to tell anybody anything. This is actually happening right now. So I think we've gotten to a point in human history where the social commentary on the absurdism that we face is just, it's too slow, I guess, because we got, like, I can't keep up anymore. Every time I turn on the news, or I just go on Twitter, I see somebody saying some shit. I'm like, oh my God, this doesn't sound like a real thing. This sound like, is this actually an SNL skit? Is this something that somebody made up? Is this, oh my God, it's fucking real.
That's the reason why we haven't got a new season of Black Mirror. The creator, they actually said, what's going on? It was like, I don't know. One, I'm not in a space where I can make a conversation off of something. The world is already in that space. I was like, I don't want to touch that, and stuff like that. It was like, that's one of those reasons, that, like, kind of like what you said, is like, I'm just can't find that opportunity to do so. But, going back to, like I said, with that decision of just doing the 4-panel on the strip, I think, outside of it, just building that conversation, I mean, you see how the Boondocks, like, even though, like, a lot of people do love the show and everything like that, it stemmed from the strip, and people saw that and it was like, okay. And then you was able to have longer form conversations based off of the show as well, right? And that's what I equated when I got introduced to your work. I was like, okay, like this, I'm loving this because this is what it's doing to my mind. It's making me think this way. And now I was like, okay, if they do a long form, I would love to see the long form version of it. But yeah, I would love to see it in a production sense like that, right? It was like that would be the next evolution of it for it, because it's like now I get to see more of the mind of Chuck, like what is going on with him, and with that, how does he extend that? And I love, like, with the scene of being it, like, the outside of that bar, because when you think about just in general, when I think about going back to my club days and when I was clubbing heavily, it's like, yeah, I remember being in that line, hearing the conversations, seeing what people deal with. I'm an artist myself. I was always cool with the bouncer, the club owner, the bartender. I mean, the bartenders and everything like that, right? So it's like, hearing what you guys deal with, like, I got to see behind the veil, and I was like, man, y'all, if you think about any classic sitcom, who knows the most? The bartender. The bartender knows the most. Saying the bouncer knows every. They know the people. It's like, Jimmy, come on, man.
Exactly.
People, right? And so, like, even thinking about, like, how the start of your comic to me was really dope, because he was like, you have these moments that you always deal with, right? And then you said that the drug addict, everybody knew this drug addict, and then you just had that one moment that you was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go in the back and write this down. And you said that you wrote down like 150 one-liners, and it made me start thinking about kind of like the Boondocks, but also The Wire. So you know how The Wire starts and it has that one line, right? So I was like, oh, that's like, if he was to put this on TV, the set would start with just whatever one line that he wrote. This happened.
It's funny that you say that, because that's it. And everything you just said, I'm totally with you on. Just so you know, I already wrote like the first 3 scripts for like an actual show. Like, you know, a full, like anywhere between 11-minute to 22-minute. I already wrote the whole thing, like, and everything, outlined the whole season and everything. And one of the things that I was banking on, that it would be so far in between when The Wire came out, this came out, that people would forget about those one-liners at the beginning of every episode. That was the thing. I was like, yo, that's some brilliant shit. Like, yeah, they did that shit like 20 years before I did, but like, yeah.
I just love the culture. But when I heard that's the first thing I thought of, and I said, that is amazing, because I was like, one, is based off of real life scenarios, and two, like I said, when it's all said and done and people talk about it and everything like that, like you have that relic of, yeah, this is what this stemmed from, this, and then you're speaking from true life experiences, but then you're making it into a whole thing. And I say that it to me, that the whole concept of bounce comic is really, really dope, just how it happens. And then, like, being that you are also a Blerd, right, and how you love anime and stuff like that, right, the way that you incorporate it, like one of my favorite one was the Attack on Santa, right? That's what
the Attack on Santa, yeah.
Like I love
Attack on SantaCon. Yeah.
I love that panel so much, because I was like, oh yeah, this is really dope. But then even like, I think with the bar, with the nightlife that you get to do, like you get to create panels based off of like just things going on. Because even during the Halloween one, where you jump in with the Saiyan armor, and like his assholeness was on level 9,000 on the Scouter. It's like
exactly, having
those moments. I thought that was just dope of incorporating them together in one. Like I thought that was
it's funny because, like, look, there was only one other bar that I worked at where I had one of the guys that worked at the door with me. That was a big comic book. My man Cisco, older than me, big ass Dominican dude, used to be so into comics, video games, and anime. He knew every reference I made at the door. Like he would just sit there. I would just sit there and be like, "Yo, man, that's some like if somebody would come in with some like awesome looking crazy clothing, I'm like, yo, that's some JoJo's Bizarre Adventure shit right there, man." Right. And he'd be like, yo, I'd be like, yeah, you get it. But the thing is, I think that was the beginning of everything, because it was like, understanding that somebody who was very into a lot of this stuff, the fans would appreciate that. So, if I made anime references or putting certain tropes on characters that were, like villains or whatever, and they seem like the really whack 80s anime boss, or like the video game boss at the end of like a final fight game or something or whatever. They would get those references. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to put a lot of that stuff in there. And I think that one of the things of going into Bounce was just the whole aspect of surrealism. It's like, we can base this whole thing on real life experiences, but why not get a little crazy with it? Like, let's fuck with it a little bit. Yeah. Let's have the bouncer come out, in an actual Halloween costume that looked like Saiyan gear, and then give somebody an actual Kamehameha. Like, let's do it. Like, we should not shy away from that. Yeah. I have an ongoing theme in Bounce where the bouncer becomes one of his childhood fears, which is like things that he was afraid of when he was a kid. Like there was one where he became Pumpkinhead, from the original, movie. There's one where he becomes Godzilla. I remember when I was a kid, as much as I love Godzilla now, because he is the king. But like when I was a kid, I was afraid because I thought that motherfucker was going to come out of Coney Island and attack Brooklyn. Like that's what I thought was going to happen. But
hold on, wait a minute. I do got to bring this up because we talked about this on the podcast. So that is the other what Godzilla 2000 was. It was the greatest music video ever because nothing is better than Puff Daddy and Dragon and Godzilla. And Puff dancing in front of God, and Godzilla literally had to stop and say, "Wait, what is going on?"
Listen, that Godzilla gave us something that I never ever thought I would see in my life. Jimmy Page. First of all, you have to understand the significance of Jimmy Page appearing, making a physical appearance, playing guitar in a video, much rather than Led Zeppelin even lending Kashmir to anybody else. I'm a big rockhead, so I'm a big fanboy when it comes to old school rock and metal. But when it comes to Led Zeppelin, does not give anything. They don't give anything away unless you're paying like half the budget of the movie. That's the reason why when I saw Thor Ragnarok and I saw Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin, I was like, oh, they must have paid Led Zeppelin. That was half their budget. Because Led Zeppelin has it in their clause that they gonna charge you out the ass to use their songs. So to see Jimmy Page and Puff Daddy, I never thought I would see that ever. And I'm glad I'm old enough, showing my age, yeah, that I was able to see that particular kind of feat. Because that was an awesome time for the time that came out, man.
Right,
that was crazy.
With rock though, I do love your, again, with your comic, the education piece, right? Like you had that one Patreon, like, oh, we saw your shirt, and then you had on the origins of rock, right? Which is often forgotten. A lot of people forget, that Black people, we were heavily in it. It's a lot of rock music is influenced by that. And so
absolutely.
But again, it goes thin. You have 4 panels to get that through, right? And so that's why I said, like, I love just how you are able to have such smart, comical conversations within it. Like I said, then the relationship between, Dragon Black and Yemaya, like, I love that. Like, I love, because it's like it reminds, because if you work at any gig, and it's a male and female relationship that's not necessarily with each other, but what I'm saying, but like they're just they homies, like those conversations that you guys have, where like she had that one, like you were saying, like, oh, the social construct of relationships is just, I'm done with it. And she didn't text you back, did she?
Yeah.
It's stuff like that, right? It's stuff like, because you have those conversations where, like I said, when you have a platonic friend of the other sex, like you get you hear that, you hear their relationships ups and downs, you hear when
absolutely.
So like you get that, and then you get to poke fun at it. You get to poke fun.
Right. You get to do that. And the thing is, I think that most people, and I think that's the reason why I remember when Yemaya came in after the first, I think, 6 pages I did. The 6 comic strips I did, Yemaya came into it. And literally after like the 3rd or 4th appearance of Yemaya in the comic, they were like, yo, the Bouncer and Yemaya need to get together. And I was like, absolutely, they should not. Yeah. Because I think that one of the things that goes into most of the narrative, or most of the stories that we want to tell, as far as Black folks are concerned, there is an aspect of Black love that is lacking. Now, when I'm talking about Black love, not on the cis hetero normative type way. I'm talking about just across the board. You know what I'm saying? Like every time, even when they show like the cis heteronormative, type shit, they'll show you like a Black dude with a white woman, or a white woman with a Black man, or like whenever I'm like, hey, okay, like, but that really doesn't really exist out here. Like, especially in New York, I don't see it. And it's not because I'm not saying that I don't see it like it doesn't exist. I'm saying I don't see it because it's not that much of a reality, because most of the couples I see walking around here are of the same race. And if they are mixed, it's not the way that they show them on TV at all. Homosexual relationships, the same thing. Like every time I see, kind of like a gay relationship, it's always like the white guy and the Black guy. Yeah. Or either the white lesbian girl and the Black lesbian girl, or either it's like a trans white woman or a trans Black dude, or whatever the case is. And I'm like, but what happened to Black folks actually loving each other in the same community? And the same, and just to bring it to the most minute level, I wanted to be able to have just a relationship between two friends, a Black woman and a Black man.
Round
That is
two.
it. There was nothing else. I grew up with a lot of amazing Black women.
Say that, like I said,
That's all it is.
I told you early on that I'm a call center manager, so most of my jobs I worked at were call centers, and there's Black women in general, women in call centers. That's usually the majority of the workforce in call centers. Usually women. I've had so many platonic friends where it's just, I'm a Black man, this is a Black woman, and we are cool. There's no sexual tension. There's no, we going up or anything like that. We just cool. We just kick it. We laugh. We may hit lunch with each other. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know, when I saw that relationship with it, it's like, I get it, because there's a lack of Black relationships that we see. But that doesn't mean that we have that responsibility that we gotta do it all the time. Like, no,
exactly.
We can do that, but we can also have this. We got to show this too, because
we can do this. It's not that hard.
Yeah,
it's not that hard. Like the thing is, it's like it's not that hard to do, but it's not that hard to find. Like, you know, I grew up like even some of my best friends right now are Black women that I can talk to about anything. And it's like, you know, and Black men too, that across the board, I have best friends that I can talk to anything about. And it doesn't lead to anything crazy or anything else. And I felt that I needed to portray that, because the thing is, I think that there's been this lack of that. Like, either a Black woman is supposed to be portrayed like this, or a Black man is supposed to be portrayed like this, or their relationship between each other has to be portrayed a certain kind of way. And I'm like, no, this is not always the case. Yeah. Black people can actually be friends. Like, Black women and Black men can be friends. Like, it can happen. It happens all the time. It happens every day, despite what you see on social media, despite what you see on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. They can actually be friends. Right. And it's just, you know,
start thinking about it, you're like, dang, when did we stray from that? Like, when think about it like this way, like when you look at even some of our classic shows in the 90s, we had that, right? Living single. Not everybody was hooking up. Like, yeah, it was like, you know, there was friends, you know, like, you know, yeah, Cal, you know, and like though they were couples, but there was still a group of friends. And Martin, you know, Pam, Cole, and Tommy and Gina, like there was a group of friends. So you had that portrayed on show where there was friends. And now it's just like, okay, yeah, we're gonna have a cast of individuals, but the two Black people are gonna be together, and then everybody else will be. Like, but no, it doesn't have to be. Like, when did we stray away from that?
But even in those shows that you just mentioned, like, if we really think, let's break down like Martin, for example. Like, you had Pam and Tommy got into a relationship, right? And they were friends for a certain amount of seasons. They got into a relationship, and when everybody saw it, they was like, oh, that makes sense. That's off the hook. That's cool and everything. And then the shit started to fall apart. Yeah. And then when it fell apart, they went back to being friends. That's the thing. A lot of people that I realize I'm looking at now can't do that, and they can't maintain that level of maturity to the point of knowing it's like, you know, these are two individuals, human beings who have two different personality types, who got into a romantic relationship. It didn't work out, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they hate each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just that level, and I think that's another thing that, you know, I tend to see with like Gen Xers versus Gen Zers, like, or Boomers versus Gen Zers, or whatever the case, like all this bullshit. And I'm like, you know, everybody's mad at each other. The Boomers and the Xers are mad because they don't like the way Gen Zers are working out. And Gen Zers are pissed off because it's like, you didn't leave a platform for us. And you know what? They're both right. They're right.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. Like, we haven't tackled a certain level of understanding the relationship between basic human decency or human respect. So much to the point where it's like, you know, you can have a romantic relationship with somebody, or you can have a sexual relationship with somebody and still maintain a certain level of respect for one another and not have to make it into this thing because of what the status quo tells you need to do.
Right.
Or what, and most of the social norms that we tend to see come from a very oppressive ideology.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to go into this. We can go into this in a whole other topic, but like, you know, it's just it's one of those things that it just needs to change.
Yeah,
it needs to change. And one of the things, and I know in this comic is only two best friends who are, you know, one's a man and one's a woman. Oh my God, that's so fucking like iconic, right? No, it shouldn't be.
Right.
And that's the thing. And they're Black. Oh my God, that's even crazier. Like, nah, it's really like that happens like in real life.
So,
you know?
So outside of Bounce Comic, just like I said, I mean, though Bounce Comic has been amazing for you, and it is, you know, your flagship comic. Like I said, you're not new to this. Like I said, you got a chance, and I thought what was really dope with you being from Brooklyn was you got a chance to be a part of Biggie. I Got a Story to Tell, the Netflix thing.
Right. Yeah, that was fun.
I was like that had to be surreal, especially because you know, being around, you was around old school hip hop, golden age hip hop, new age hip hop. So you saw the whole trajectory of hip hop, and knowing what Biggie meant to Brooklyn and to the state of hip hop. Man, how was that when you got that call, when you got involved with that?
Look, first of all, the story is never as romantic as most people think it is. It's like, it's never like, oh, you know, I got the call and, you know, I said to myself, let me do this thing. I literally got the call and was like, yeah, you got like 2 weeks to do this shit. And I was like, God damn it. So like, it was a friend of mine that worked at but I won't put the thing out there because I don't want to. Though there was no NDAs that was signed, but you know, they work at a high-end animation place, and they hit me up and they were like, "Look, we want to do this thing about Biggie," and I was like, "All right, cool." And I said, "Oh, so this is going to be a whole production for Netflix? It's for an ad." I was like, "All right, cool." And then all of a sudden, they were like, yeah, you got like 3 weeks to do this shit. And I was like, wait, what? So I had to work through the holiday, which was of 2020, which was like, I think at the beginning of December, all the way up. I think the last thing that I had to turn in for it right before it came out was like the first week of March. So we worked on that straight. But it was challenging, at the same time very fulfilling, because I got a chance to know Biggie on a level that I never knew him before, because in preparation for it, I was provided with a lot of pictures of Biggie behind the scenes and family pictures that I never saw, and it was to see him in that light as a regular person was really, really, like, I can't even come up with the word for it. It was amazing, you know. So to channel that and to see what he liked as a kid, I was like, you know, honestly, if Biggie was still alive, we'd be about the same age. So I knew what influenced him. So it was like I had to go in there and design like a lot of the stuff that was going to be in there, especially some of the big robot stuff and like, you know, some of the scenes where he was fighting the dudes and everything else. And big shout out to, you know, shit, like I should have looked this up before, the animation studio that did it. And like everyone involved, like, because they literally brought that whole thing to life. Because I sat there and I did all the character designs, and you know, I was the art director, which I laid down the colors and everything, but they totally killed it. But it was really cool. And growing up not too far away from, I mean, I live in Bed-Stuy now. I literally live exactly like where Biggie was talking about.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I grew up in East Flatbush. I grew up on by, you know, Newkirk. I'm sorry, by Church Avenue and Nostrand. So not being too far away from there, like, and understanding what that was big for me.
I think
That
it's
was big for me.
I think it's dope that they got you involved too because of you being from like New York in general. Because yes,
Right.
shout out to there's a lot of people that are dope. Got a lot of illustrators who probably could have did character design, but I think when you can get somebody that's in the city or in the state, in that culture that's so close to it, even if like you just get a different feeling for it. Like it's like it's only right, you know. It's like it has that connection to it. And I thought that was pretty dope. But again,
Yeah, that was the thing though. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like that's one quick thing I want to say about that was that, you know, the person who hit me up was like, look, we want. I remember the first week I did a whole bunch of designs, and I was doing very commercial looking, straight up like plain designs. And the director was like, no, we literally want what you're doing about. We want Biggie in the Bounce universe. And I was like, say no more.
Yeah.
So I went back and redesigned everything. And I was like, all right, so this right here is literally an extension of the Bounce universe, but Biggie's in there.
And
So
see, that's what makes
like,
me
yeah,
because that's truly your imprint. And you know, it's one of the things that I love because like as an artist, you know, I often would hire a photographer or hire a videographer. And I like they always said that they love working with me because one, I'm not a person that overly says, okay, we gotta do it this way, da 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 da. Like if I hire you, that's because I love your work. I would like to see me within your style, right? So like I am very particular when I choose like videographers and you know photographers because I'm like, yes, I love how you shoot. Put me
yeah.
Tell me what you want me to do. Like you know, like that, you know, I'll give you a theme. Okay, this is kind of like the theme, like the feel, but I want your style in that, like in this
Right.
And so like, you know, and I know that as a creator, you know, like I said, you got to see your art style on a major platform. Like that has to fill a bucket for you.
That was that look, it's interesting because people you tend to see stuff. It's kind of like when you interview some people and you're like, well, I don't even remember us shooting that scene. It's like when you're in the moment of doing things, like everything is so all over the place, but there's that one moment when you see everything come together and you're just like, oh my God, like this actually became a thing.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was definitely a huge highlight. I kind of, you know, obviously, you know, I'm a big critic of my own work. And I was like, I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, I could have designed that different. Oh my God, that was, you know, whatever. But, you know, at the end of the day, it was just like, you know, getting an email and everybody on the team and, you know, Biggie's estate, like thanking you and, you know, retweeting it, resharing it, you know, reposting it on Instagram and being very proud about it. You know, that really meant a lot.
Yeah.
That meant a lot. And I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, I would think so. Like knowing that the people closest to him was proud of the work that you did,
Yeah.
that probably felt a little bit better too, more than your art style, because it's like knowing that this is something that's near and dear to people. Like, you know, you want to make sure you handle it with care. But again, like with you, I think what's really dope about your journey is like that's not the first historical thing that you got a chance to be a part of, because was another one where you got.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! Yeah, you going? Oh, I may have to pour myself another drink. God damn, you bringing it back? Like that was that was a whole, oh my God. Yeah, Sidemen was as amazing as Biggie was, Sidemen was emotional for me.
Oh man.
Yeah, Sidemen was it was three Black men who basically shaped the evolution of blues when it came to it becoming the mainstream, and they never got their credit.
Yeah.
I came onto the project late. I came onto the thing about the movie was the way that it was shot. Like my boy Jason, I used to work with him. He used to have a band here in New York called, I think it was called Star Killers. And they used to come to my bar all the time. And, we used to talk a lot of shit and, talked about film and everything else. And he saw my artwork. And you know how it is. You want a job. People's like, yo, you do some dope shit. Like, yeah, that's cool. All right, cool. Yeah, I'll see you later. Like, yo, we need to hook up. Like, yeah, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Hits me back up like 5 years later, like, Chuck, yo, we want to do something with you. And it's like, oh, okay. And, when that whole thing, they had already shot so much of all three of these Black men through their journeys, telling their story, up until they finally all got their acknowledgement at the Grammys, and they all passed right before the film came out. So their families had to see it. So I came on, I think Hubert Sumlin was the last one to pass, if I'm not mistaken. And so I was like, that's really new and fresh for the family. I need to make sure that, I draw Hubert really well. So I remember like having all of these, I have so much reference for all of them. And to hear their stories, like, Hubert performing, like for me, I did a whole piece where it was like Hubert and Jimi Hendrix on stage together, which was never documented or never shown on any kind of screen because of the fact that no one recorded it. I mean, this is time before cell phones or whatever the case is. So like I had to do this story where Hubert Sumlin was a huge inspiration for Jimmy. And he finally got a chance to play on stage with him. And they were both at like the peak.
Right.
And even though Hubert was already around before, Jimmy, but like, he was like, I used to listen to you to learn to play the guitar. So they got a chance to play on stage together. And I had to draw that thing. That was crazy. And then to hear, like all these other stories of the things that these dudes had to go through, that was a lot, but yeah, it was crazy. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to, because that took about a year to work on, because there was so many things, so many scenes that they wanted to change. I had finished certain things and they were like, all right, we need to do the whole thing over again and everything else. But like, even though the fate of the film was that it was a great film because they had a lot of good people that they interviewed for it. But the problem was they didn't have a good distributor. They didn't have a good distributor, and it didn't make it to certain places that it had to go to. But I still think as a collected piece of work, it gives you the education that you would need to know about not just the major blues people like B.B. King, like Howling Wolf, and all these other ones. It's like, or even Robert Johnson. I mean, like Robert Johnson is known as that dude, but at the same time, there's plenty of other ones. And these three were some of them. In fact, the ones, and to see that, their legacy still lives on and based on like some of the foundations that they've created is really great. So, yeah, it was a very, that year and a half was very emotional because it was like, whew, it's a lot to deal with. But You know, but this you understand, because it was during all of these things happened. Their stories happened between the civil rights movement, Jim Crow era, and it was just like understanding what that was to be Black and making this music, and then also being top priority to be hunted in this country. It's just crazy.
But I mean, what's dope about it is like you probably didn't sit back and get a chance to realize it, but like you are handling sensitive topics and sensitive scenarios with actual living people. I mean, with actual people who live. You are handling with such care that there's people, family that they have nothing but positive things to say about how you handle that. You are giving light and life to things that wasn't able to be portrayed on screen, or wasn't be like only like it was a moment that was captured just by a photo, and you're able to help bring that to life. And I think that again, that's always dope when the people closest to it. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be like, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be, you know, I don't got to get the big recognition from the board, knowing that this cousin of this person, this actual person, they hold this near and dear. Like that right there hits you right in your heart, because you're like, yeah, I made the family proud. More than anything,
Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to make sure that I do, right? And so it's like, that's really dope that like you have that sense of that reputation about you, because it's like, yeah, if somebody was to want to hire you on, or you know, off of that, and then they just take those two projects and say, all right, let me reach out to the family about it, and they're like, knowing that your reputation can travel with that, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, Chuck is he's a good person, he's a person.
Yeah, I mean, even before I came onto all these projects, the families already knew. You know, and that was the thing about both Sidemen and the Biggie project. Like every design that I did and everything that I hooked up was up to scrutiny from both estates.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It was like, it wasn't one of those things where it was like the director said, okay, that's cool, just do it. Like, no, it was in total respect of all the families. And that right there is everything to me. And, you know, it's, you know, I feel like if that is one of the things, like right now, I'm currently working with journalist, writer extraordinaire, Mr. Kevin Powell. Yeah, he's getting ready to do a documentary. And I'm working with him doing the same exact thing. You know, we're doing like, you know, historical pieces where I'm drawing all kinds of amazing stuff. And, you know, it's just a reflection on what he's doing. And I'm not going to reveal what the documentary is about. You'll see it when it comes out. But yeah, it's the same exact thing. It's like just seeing certain iconic people in history. And honestly, if you asked me like 5 years ago if I'd be doing this, I'd tell you like, I've never drawn Tupac before. I've never drawn fucking Chuck D from Public Enemy, but I guess I'm gonna do it now. Like, you know, but yeah, it becomes one of those things where if I'm gonna do it, I'll do it right. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, half-ass it, or especially when it comes to stories that revolve around us, I'm not gonna half-ass it at all. You know, it's not just another job. This is about us, and these are stories that need to get told. You know, it's a very important thing. It's a very trying task, especially when you understand the subject of what it is, and you understand the people involved and how it affects everybody. And it also affects the perception of what everybody's going to think of what these whole things, you know, of what these people represented, and the messages that they were trying to put across. So yeah, so it's a lot, but you know, I'll hook it up. I'll do my best to do it. You know,
you got the trust from the people, man. The people, we all know that you're going to do it. You know what? So I always ask for fan questions and everything, and it wasn't a fan question, more of a fan statement. But somebody said that they always imagined that at one point Dragon Black would give them the 10 bounce commandments. And I thought that was hilarious.
You know what? That's one of the things. It's like, I don't, I don't think there's actually commandments. I think that and I'm gonna look up the entire thing for you real quick. There was a comic. I have the comic. I'm gonna look it up right now. I'm typing it in. It's literally, I want to go ahead and say, I think I did it like 2 years ago. And it doesn't come down to commandments. Yeah, here it is. It doesn't come down to commandments. It comes down to words. Respect, honesty, courage, rectitude, loyalty, honor, and benevolence.
Oh, okay. Hey.
That's it. That's all you need.
Yeah. But
That's all you need.
But it's so dope. Like, again, when I threw up that we are doing the interview with you, the people came out. Like, people, like, a lot of people love the comic, man. They love what you stand for. They love what you do. But get into some other fun topics, man, because I do my deep dives, as you see.
Okay. Yes. I love this. This is great. Yeah.
One of the things me and you agree upon, your favorite game of all time, Streets of Rage, one of my favorite games of all time.
Absolutely.
And I feel like in the Streets of Rage setting, I feel like at some point I feel like they would come across Bounce. They would come across Dragon Black. They would come across that club.
Well, here's the thing, and you know what? I'm gonna pour myself another drink real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, man. We chilling, man.
Here's the thing. Originally, before there was an animation, when I made the comic, the very first thing that I thought about was making an actual Streets of Rage Final Fight type game. And you remember in the old school Streets of Rage and Final Fight, you always had duplicates of the same character. Oh yeah. You always had like that. So I made this thing in Bounce called the Douchebag Cloning Facility.
Oh yeah, you talked about that in the comic.
Yeah, exactly. So you would have all of these douchebags who are going about, and they would just be like, and there would be like crews of them. Each color, they would look exactly the same, but each color would represent a hierarchy of the douchebag that they are. They would start off with blue and yellow, and then they'd be like the little low level niggas. And then you'd have like the blue, you have like the red and green. Yep. That would be like the midway, and then you have the black and white ones that were like the high up, like final boss looking. So each thing would take place in the universe where you had they go out through the 5 boroughs of Brooklyn, and in Manhattan it would start off with the douchebag cloning facility. When you get to Brooklyn, it would be the hipster cloning facilities, and then you get to other places, it'd be like the gentrifiers cloning facility, and then you get like all these other things throughout each borough of New York till you get to the last boss, which is Wall Street. But that's just me. That's what I would do.
It's such a cool ass video game right from the start. I remember, as a kid, I remember I was Super Nintendo, and my older cousins had Sega. So I would go over their house, and of course they'd be playing the games. And I just remember from the start that opening scene of Streets of Rage with the city, the theme, like, and everything. And then I'm just like, what is this? Like this it was like the most amazing game I've ever saw at
so
that.
Good.
And it still holds up. I had downloaded an emulator and played it probably 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, it still feels amazing. It's still just so good. Just that side, just even that moment right before the comes when the
thing, yeah. Oh. But wait, did you play Streets of Rage 4 yet?
Yes.
Bruh. The fact that they have like all the little 16-bit looking dudes in the game, and they have Axel, the one from Streets of Rage 2, who's super broken because he throws his fist so fast, like you could beat anybody in the game. I was like, yeah, I love it. I
just remember, and I remember when they introduced Skate, like how cool Skate was.
Oh man. Don't
Like,
even get me started. I'm so mad at that character because he has so much potential. You know, you introduce him as Skate, and then he could like evolve them to something totally new.
oh yeah, they
But
definitely.
they didn't do anything. And even in this one, I was like, yo, y'all need to update Skate. Like, make him like he don't fight on skates anymore. He fights on a hoverboard. Like, I don't know, something. Give me something.
Right.
Let's look it up.
So that was really dope. Another dope thing that I found out. So I was just kind of looking into like just a little bit more of the history, right? So I know that like you got into comic books at an early age. Your pops gave you Spider-Man. Spider-Man was the first comic book that you received. That, but one of your favorite characters also is Lobos, which a lot of people don't recognize Lobos. But I'm like, duh. Like if you expect, I remember I got introduced to Lobos through the Justice League cartoon.
Yeah.
Right. And I just remember, like, yeah, he like his storyline. He came when Superman was supposedly dead. He was trying to be the replacement for Superman, but he came in rock star as hell. Like,
Of course.
He was supposed to be the butt of all jokes, but he was really strong. He was kicking ass. Like he held his own. It was just like it was way different than how Superman approached. But he was
absolutely, yeah. That was the thing. Well, the thing is, here's what was crazy. Back in those days, like when I was younger, yeah, I read all the Marvel and I was never really a big DC head. I was mostly into Marvel, Spider-Man, obviously, like you said, you know, my dad bought my first one, and then there was X-Men. Yeah. But when I was going to the comic book store, like you have to also realize this is Brooklyn. So the only comics I used to be on those racks, those little turnaround racks I used to get all the time. So when I went to an actual comic store, the two comics that I used to get was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the black and white edition, before it became all commercial, and 2000 AD. And 2000 AD had Judge Dredd, ABC Warriors, Slain, Road Trooper, all of these amazing titles. Yeah. And I got a shit ton of them. Written by Alan Moore, drawn by Simon Bisley, drawn by Cam Kennedy and all these amazing artists and writers, Grant Morrison, all of them got their start over at 2000 AD. So I was reading this stuff way back then. And there was the British invasion that happened in the late 80s into the early 90s, where Simon Bisley hooked up with Keith Giffen, who originally created Lobo. And when Lobo actually had his first own comic by himself, it was Simon Bisley, which already at the time I was a big fan of because he already drew ABC Warriors. Yeah. So at like 3 years prior. So this is like what, 1990, I think? Yeah, I remember, oh man, you making me go back. I remember buying ABC Warriors in like 88, 89. And seeing, yeah, he basically came on to draw Lobo, and it was a totally new style from what he did in ABC Warriors. I absolutely loved it. And so that became like the staple of everything that I drew, like crazy, exaggerated nonsense. And yeah, it was one of those things. But yeah, Lobo was basically one of my favorite characters because and even back in the 90s, like, you know, we all got our problematic faves. He was my problematic fave for the 90s. But like, you know, he basically evolved over the course of time. And I definitely love what they're doing with him by giving them a daughter and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, it's been crazy.
Fleshing out his character in general. Here's where I think DC messed up, because Jason Momoa would have been the perfect.
Bruh, don't even get me started.
I hate him.
I refused to watch Aquaman because I wanted to boycott it because I thought that was wrong casting. He should have played Lobo.
I right when I said, and this is what pissed me off, because I said, what y'all turned Aquaman into is basically Lobo. Y'all making rock star type of the character is
that's Lobo. He's right there. He's right there. No, don't even get me started, man. I was so pissed off because I was like, yo, I'm not gonna see Aquaman. I eventually watched it, and then I was annoyed even more because I was like, hey, this is exactly what Lobo is. Why are we gonna do this right now? Hey. What is going on?
Oh my God. All right. So we have two segments that we do before we get out of here. I want to start.
No doubt.
What the first segment that we do top five. Now this is going to be hard, but here's I give a caveat. I tell people it can be right now. It doesn't have to be current, and it doesn't have to be in order, right? So that way it can.
Okay.
Now, so being that you are, like I said, you are anime influenced. I want to get some top five anime
for you. Okay. Give me a second. Because I have various lists.
I know everybody does.
Okay. Cowboy Bebop.
Can't wait for. I'm actually excited.
Oh yeah, me too. Did you see the new trailer today? Oh yeah, exactly. Cowboy Bebop, Gurren Lagann, Dragon Ball Z, Full Metal Alchemist, and The Peacock King.
That is a solid list. That is a solid list.
That's just me, like literally. If I had to pick favorites, like that's it right there. Like
I see the PS5 in the back, so now I gotta ask top five consoles for you.
Oh, Super Nintendo, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5.
Okay. Hey, I didn't shout out to the Sega Saturn. I can't remember what game. There was a racing game. So I'm not a big fan of racing games at all. But there was this one racing game on Sega Saturn that I like because like me and you can play, right? But my car makeup will be completely different from yours based off of the type of upgrades that I chose. And I just can't remember the name of the game. That was the only racing game that I liked because I was like, oh, I can really customize it like down to everything. It's not just customize the wheels, the paint. Like I can have a different engine, NOS, I can have this here, whatever. Like
was it like an import Japanese game or
I believe so. Yeah. But
probably because there was a lot of games that came out for the Sega Saturn that never saw the light of day over here in the States.
Yeah, and that one was I used to love just stuff like that. So, all right. So the last segment that we got is just recommendations. It could be something that you're watching, reading, listening to, or anything, but something that you think that our listeners and viewers should check out.
Oh man, Well, right now. I haven't been playing. The only thing that I've been playing recently, because it's one of those kind of games I could turn on and off, because it's one of those looter shooter grinders, is Warframe.
Ooh, Warframe. My brother plays it heavily.
Yeah.
He also does the podcast with me. He lives and dies by Warframe.
I'm a big Warframe, a big Baruch fan. I love my main is Baruch. As far as shows. The thing is, here's the problem with me is like when I draw so much during the day, I leave shows playing in the background, so I don't actually see them. Yeah. Like I listen to them. it's like radio shows for me or podcasts. Exactly. So, I would say, as far as a movie is concerned. I recently just rewatched Color Out of Space, which is a really great. I'm a big horror movie fan.
Okay.
And even though H.P. Lovecraft was a racist piece of shit, but his stories were very chilling.
Yeah.
And one of the best depictions of that story was Color Out of Space, The Color of Outer Space, and that is with Nicolas Cage. Being Nicolas Cage, so you can go ahead and see that. And one last anime. I think everybody's seen it already. Jujutsu Kaisen. Oh, yeah. Like that's been like I literally play that shit every day. God of High School. And Tact OP.
Okay, I don't think I watched that one yet.
Tact OP. Oh my God, watch that shit. I did. It's only 2 episodes up because it's simulcast.
Okay.
And it just started. Like, it's only 2 episodes up on Crunchyroll.
Okay.
And literally, it's like the Avengers of animation directors and artists that came together to make this. It's Madhouse and Mappa together.
Okay. Oh.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's Madhouse, map it together. The animation is phenomenal. It's fucking bananas. I was like losing my shit over it. Yeah.
All right. So what's
Definitely give it a shot.
what's next, man? What can we expect coming up from you, from Bounce? What's going on?
Dude, honestly, I'm gonna be real with you. I haven't thought about anything new for Bounce for a while, not because I don't want to continue doing it, but because life, circumstances, and I got to make an income doing other things. But I've been getting the bug. I've been getting the just like even today, like I was working on some stuff for other people and I stopped in the middle of it to start doing Bounce stuff. And I was like, oh, let me remix this and do that. Like, it was a whole, and I started writing some new stories, but which if you put this up, I gotta put a block on all the people who I'm doing work for so they won't see that. So they won't come back to me like, oh, now we know why you late with the shit. And so like, but I definitely want to do some new stuff with that. And I'm working on a book right now with Daniel Jose Older and John Jennings for Abrams called Death's Day. It's supposed to be due out I think at the end of next year.
Okay.
So I'm currently working on that right now. And that's about it for now. I'm doing other couple of things that I can't really talk about, with people signing contracts and bullshit, whatever. But yeah.
All right. So
that's what it is.
Where can my people find you at, man?
Well, these days I'm not on social media as much. Like I'm even surprised I saw your messages. I was like, oh shit. Right. Oh, it's been a minute. But you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and I think that's about it. Twitter and Instagram at bounce_comic. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You can find me there. And bouncethecomic.com, where you can go and look at some Bounce comic strips. And if you want to order any digital copies, digital collections that I have of all the comic strip, you can go to bouncercomic.com.
We'll make sure the link is in below in the description.
Yeah.
Man, again, appreciate you, man. This has been a one-on-one with Deuces, the place where I speak with curators and people that you should know. I've been your boy Deuces. It's been the amazing Chuck Collins, and we are out.
Victory.